One of our little rituals here at the Abbey is to something that a friend of ours taught us years ago. It's called a stand-up meeting. And we meet every morning, and it's supposed to be pretty short, so we stand. Though lately maybe we should be sitting. But we arrange our day together, and it's a nice, one of the nicest things about that, I think, is we set a motivation for the day as a group. And recently, I quite enjoyed this. There's a series of books that Venerable John Bell bought for us, and one by Desmond Tutu had all these great short sayings in it, so I wanted to share one. And this is, you know how you have things posted all over your refrigerator and your mirrors? This is one that our abbess told us to put up. So, we get the most upset with those we love. The most. Yeah, we get the most upset with those we love the most because they are close to us, and we know that they are aware of our weaknesses. If only we could learn to live with our inadequacies, our frailties, our vulnerabilities, we would not need to try so hard to push away those who really know us. We can love others with their failures when we stop despising ourselves because of our failures. Yeah, I'll read the whole thing again, because it's very, you know, he's very wise, and it's good for us to recognize this and overcome this tendency. It's quite prevalent in our culture. We get the most upset with those we love the most because they are close to us, and we know that they are aware of our weaknesses. If only we could learn to live with our inadequacies, our frailties, our vulnerabilities, we would not need to try so hard to push away those who really know us. We can love others with their failures when we stop despising ourselves because of our failures. And I find this to be quite true, that, you know, if you really can settle your mind and look at what's going on, a lot of times we get quite upset with ourselves when we don't live up to our own expectations, our own wishes for ourselves. And what I have found really helpful in this regard is to come back to the sense of integrity. And in another one of these books, I couple it with some words from Gandhi, where he made it very clear that, okay, what is integrity? Integrity is a kind of self-respect because we have these values that we believe in. But Gandhi's point was that these values that we have it's kind of like they're higher than what we can actually do, and that's okay. And for me, that was really good to hear from him, because I have a lot of respect for him, and I realized, yeah, that's the case. We have the values that we want to live up to, and we actually fall short of them. But that's not so much the problem. I mean, what's important is that we have these values and that we aspire to them. And that's what he was pointing out, is that, yeah, it's kind of like one of the inmates years ago wrote he's quite a good writer, and he ended this, or somewhere in this essay he wrote, he said, "I'm not a good Buddhist because I can live up to these things. I'm a good Buddhist because I aspire to." And in the context of what he was saying, it was just so poignant. But the point never left me. And I think it's all pointing to the same kind of thing. We have our aspirations. And then when you think about it, like, why are these aspirations of Samattabhadra so potent? You know, I mean, I liken it to the different kind of powers that they describe in Buddhism. And one of them is like the power of determination, you know, the power of aspiration, things like that. I find those things to be quite powerful. So here it's asking us to have a kind of power that I think is a genuine kind of power. There's no power over in this. This is a kind of like the power of having insight into your own workings, into your own frailties and vulnerabilities. And that actually makes you strong. I mean, I can't remember what I was reading recently that said this so well. Oh, I guess it's this book I'm reading about monastic life. And And, you just can see this all the time. The people who are strong are not the ones who are actually getting angry and acting out. The people who are strong are those who are able to restrain themselves. The people who are strong are not the ones who retaliate. They're the ones who can generate compassion. It takes much more strength to do these things, even though many people might find these as weaknesses. Like we always encounter this with the inmate population. Like this, I was mentioning the last time I spoke, or the time before, about that man who had been in prison for 40 years, and then they let him out. He had been in solitary for 40 years. They let him out. And this is just an indication of what this prison life is like. He was walking down a street, and his mother was behind him. And she got too close, and he didn't know it was her. And his immediate reaction from living for 40 years in that environment was he was about ready to just nail the person flat. I mean, it was very violent, very aggressive. And then he turned around and he realized it was his mother, and she was just so sad. And she said, "What happened to you?" And this is what the point of the article was. This was a piece on NPR about solitary confinement. And that's that environment, or any kind of environment that is like that. And it was the same with, I know, an inmate who got out, and I had talked to him on the phone, and when he answered his cell phone, he was just so gruff till he knew who I was. And then he said, "Oh, I guess I don't need to do this." And that's the conditioning, and that environment really, it really changes people, and not for the better, and they're aware of that, which is why there's this movement. And so it really takes a kind of a strength. It takes more strength to move with compassion in some of these kind of milieus. You see? So, in our this, I think, is happening even in those kind of situations. This is a little easier to recognize, like in a family, But I think even when people, I don't know, any group of people who live together have some kind of feeling for each other, and I think a kind of love develops. And of course, there's all the other emotions too. And when you live with people that you're close to, whether it's in a community that's intentional, one that's imposed upon you, these kind of recognitions come up. I mean, it's just so clear from listening to people's stories. When you're around people a lot, you know them. You don't even have to see them. You recognize them by the sound of their robes moving, their footsteps, how they move. And so we get to know each other, that we're people that we're around quite well. And so this kind of thing comes up all the time. And so for us to be able to recognize that our own, what's important to us is to perfect our love. We're all trying to be these perfectionists. We're never going to be. That's not what the human condition is. It's something just to be let go of. If you're going to work at perfecting anything, we would want to perfect our love and our compassion. So, it's not to see our faults and our frailties and vulnerabilities as weaknesses. They're just causes and conditions. Here they are. And then you find ways to work with them that are more wholesome.